Sovereign computing effectively means that you, your family, or your business, whoever you happen to be, whatever entity you are, can have control over your computing devices and the data they collect and the communication interactions that you have with other devices, that you are in control. We view sovereign computing as control over your computing resources such that you can have privacy, security, and dignity with assurances, without trust.
Welcome to the Sovereign Computing Show, presented by ATL BitLab. I'm Jordan Bravo, and this is a podcast where we teach you how to take back control of your devices. Sovereign computing means you own your technology, not the other way around.
This episode is sponsored by ATL BitLab. ATL BitLab is Atlanta's Freedom Tech hackerspace. We have co-working desks, conference rooms, event space, maker tools, and tons of coffee. There is a very active community here in the lab. Every Wednesday night is Bitcoin night here in Atlanta. We also have meetups for cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, decentralized identity, product design, and more. We offer day passes and nomad passes for people who need to use the lab only occasionally, as well as memberships for people who plan to use the lab more regularly, such as myself. One of the best things about having a BitLab membership isn't the amenities, it's the people. Surrounding yourself with a community helps you learn faster and helps you build better. Your creativity becomes amplified when you work in this space. That's what I think, at least. If you're interested in becoming a member or supporting the space, please visit us at atlbitlab.com. That's atlbitlab.com. All right, on to our show.
Welcome to the Sovereign Computing Show. I'm Jordan Bravo, and I'm here as usual with my co-host, Stephen DeLorme.
What's up?
And today we have a special guest. We have Matt Hill from Start9. And before I kick it over to you, Matt, I wanted to let you know that the name of this show, Sovereign Computing Show, I came up with the name because I'm pretty sure I first heard it from you guys at Start9. And the reason I named this show the Sovereign Computing Show is because even though we talk about things like Bitcoin, Linux, open source software, that kind of stuff, privacy, self-hosting, these are all things that we cover, topics that we get into, but it's not a show about any of those things. Those are the tools, those are the means to get to the end. And the end is really encapsulated well by the phrase sovereign computing. Right? We want to have devices that serve us and not someone else or some other organization. I've already given my spiel in the first episode of the Sovereign Computing Show. I explained what sovereign computing means and why I think it's important and why we should all care and be striving for that. But I'd love to hear you talk about it because I think you do a great job of conveying that message. And so maybe we could start off by, you could introduce yourself and you could answer the question, what is sovereign computing and why do we care? And then, of course, feel free to segue into what Start9 is and how that's related.
Yeah, great. And thanks for having me. Early on in Start9's history, this is late 2019, wanted to get t-shirts made. And we wanted to put something on the shirt besides our name. And so that's where the debate started, and we landed on sovereign computing, and this was for the Unconfiscatable conference in February of 2020. And so we had shirts made with our logo on the front and then sovereign computing on the back. And while it was the outcome of that conversation about what we should put on the shirt, the months that followed and the years that followed, we have never been able to think of a better combination of words that succinctly describes what it is we are trying to do and trying to enable in the world. So sovereign computing effectively means that you, your family, or your business, whoever you happen to be, whatever entity you are, can have control over your computing devices and the data they collect and the communication interactions that you have with other devices, that you are in control. What's interesting about that is that privacy is actually a derivative of that. A lot of people talk about privacy. That's like a really big popular word in the broader computing world, even with companies like Apple. Side note, they don't actually mean privacy, they mean confidentiality, right? You're not private from Apple, you're just trusting them to keep your information confidential. But we actually saw sovereignty as a broader category that included both privacy and security, and one that most people don't ever talk about, dignity. So we view sovereign computing as control over your computing resources such that you can have privacy, security, and dignity with assurances, without trust.
Yeah, I've heard you before when you talked about that dignity. It really got me fired up in a good way. Of you gave this analogy of when you are using a permissioned device that is reaching out to a company's servers to access your own data. Every time you're trying to access your photo of your family member, you're effectively saying, "Hey, Mr. Apple or Google, may I please see the picture of my family member?" And they, this is happening automatically on an API level. They're saying, "Yes, we're allowing you this particular time to look at that data." But that's not always the case, right? Like, they can deny you from your data that you think is yours. But in reality, with the terms of service, like, they have full access to that and they can cut you off from it at any time.
Yep. Yeah. And I would classify that as censorship resistance, which is arguably a subcategory of security, keeping things secure and available to you, the person who owns them. But yeah, it's totally undignified to have a conversation where 10 different employees belonging to 10 different companies are effectively sitting in the room taking notes, even if you have nothing to hide, even if they're not, using those notes to hurt you, immediately at least. It's still just weird. It's still just undignified. It is not how humans have interacted forever. It's a very new phenomena where conversations, interactions, activities that people expect to be private are in fact not. That's a new thing. In the past, that was considered, like eavesdropping, surveillance, like, tapping somebody's wire required a, bench warrant. We live in the era where even your private interactions are absolutely being listened in on by many parties, and you granted them permission, right? They're not doing this secretly. It's right out in the open. Most people just don't understand how computers work, how the internet works. Nobody reads the terms and conditions, but it's not a secret. It's just unspoken. Nobody says it, but more and more people are, right? This is becoming a thing. More and more people are waking up to the reality of cloud computing, software as a service, and modern mass surveillance practices, and hopefully are beginning to reject them and look for alternatives. And that's where we come in. We believe that we are building the building blocks and foundation of an alternative computing paradigm called sovereign computing, where it is possible for normal people to be able to exist on public networks, private computers, and in such a way that there are no third parties who have access, who can control access, can charge for access, or otherwise. So yeah, we just think it's a proper and dignified foundation for the future of computing.
I really like the ethos and the mission of Start9, and I am a software engineer and I have a lot of sysadmin and infrastructure skills, but obviously not everybody does, right? My family is not able to do this. My extended family, my mom and dad, etc., like, they are not going to be installing a Linux server and maintaining it and administering it and installing apps and keeping their security posture tight and spinning up a reverse proxy so they can access it from outside their network and on and on and on. The ability to be sovereign with our data and still have most modern conveniences, I would say, exists at the current moment, but the skill set required to do so is just beyond what 99% of the population has. And so I think it's really cool to see that you guys are making something that the average person can use, the server operating system.
Yeah, we absolutely are not inventing a new concept here. We are inventing a new tool that makes a previously powerful capability that was accessible only to people with advanced skill sets available to anyone, right? We're trying to democratize access to sovereign computing. We are not inventing sovereign computing. In fact, you could argue that computers as a default were sovereign, and it was only through decades of painstaking efforts by governments and big tech corporations did it become what it has become. And we're just trying to get back to the roots and to align with the rest of human history, where, property and communications were inherently defensible and private.
I see sort of two major reactions when people realize the extent to which our modern tech living is surveilled and censored. One of them is, I'm going to go become a Luddite, live in a cabin in the woods, and eschew all technology. The other, which I think is the preferred route, is to focus on sovereign computing. And so for people who might not have heard of Start9 before and who have never used StartOS, that's your operating system, if they realize the problems with modern surveilled cloud computing and they want to try getting more sovereign with their computing, and they've heard us here on the show talk about often how self-hosting is a superpower, right? It gives you all of these modern conveniences and tools, useful, productive tools, without the downsides of some third party handling all that. When somebody downloads StartOS or buys a device from you guys that's preloaded with it, what is the sort of steps they have to go through? How technical or non-technical can they be? And what does that look like for them, the experience?
So as a higher level objective, our goal was to make administering a server as familiar as possible, right? We don't want people to feel like they have to acquire an entirely new skill set to run a server, because they already have the skill set to run a laptop, a tablet, and a cell phone. So desktop and mobile devices. They already have those skill sets. And we believe, we hypothesized that it would be possible to create abstractions in the Linux sysadmin experience that would sufficiently overlap, right, with the client administration experience as to not terrify people, as to not make it look like some totally foreign alien technology. Luckily for us, big tech companies have spent billions of dollars over the past 2 decades doing user experience R&D. Like, we know at this point, humanity, we know what an average person is expecting when they pick up a computer and try to do something, because that user UX research and product evolution has taken place for so long. And so we did our best to try to make this feel familiar, to make our operating system, StartOS, feel like Windows, macOS, iOS, Android, while at the same time diverging from those user interfaces and user experiences only to the extent that is necessary to do the different things that somebody will do on a server as opposed to what they would do on a client or mobile device, right? On a laptop or mobile device. Just like when mobile OSs came out, iOS and Android, they did their best to try to match the abstractions of the previous computing paradigm, which was the desktop, but they had to diverge from them a bit because mobile is not desktop. They are different devices and they are used for different things, and therefore the operating systems could not be one-to-one. In fact, Microsoft hypothesized that they could be one-to-one, and in the original, I think it was Windows 10, actually tried to create, they tried to do a single OS, right, Windows, that you could install onto their Windows phone or onto a PC.
I think they called it Metro UI at the time.
Yeah, that was Windows 8, but yeah, that's the one. Phone and
it totally flopped because they were trying to unify laptops with mobile devices in the form of like the Surface computer and the Windows phone. And ultimately, Windows Phone just died, right? And it wasn't just because Apple and Android were killing it. It was because they were horrible. I had a Windows Phone when they first came out with one because I, like them, thought that it might be amazing. This was, again, way back before I learned how awful Windows was in general and all the, let's not go there. So like those who came before us, right, there's a new computer now that we're trying to make available to the masses, right? There's always been servers. And there's always been people who could administer those servers, but all that administration was done via the command line. That is how you administer a server. You install some flavor of Linux, or, Mac OS, Windows can do server stuff too. But regardless of which operating system you select to administer your server, you have to pop the hood and go to the command line, right? Operating systems have two layers. They have what's above the hood and they have what's under the hood. And all server administration takes place under the hood, aka the command line. And so our goal with StartOS was to bring the Linux sysadmin experience above the hood, was to create a point-and-click graphical user interface through which a ordinary person with normal computer literacy, right, meaning they know how to administer a laptop, they know how to administer a cell phone, would understand, but would be able to do all of the advanced techniques that an experienced Linux sysadmin could do from the command line. So our job was to GUIfy the Linux command line for the sake of running self-hosted open source software. People who understand what that means, what it means to be a Linux sysadmin and have IT and networking skills and, background, would argue that what we're trying to do is inherently kind of undoable, that asymptotically you can only get so close that you're never going to be able to totally just like dumb it down, so to speak. I think some of that rhetoric comes from a place of pride, right? Like people who have these IT, Linux sysadmin, networking skills and years of experience, like anyone who possesses a craft that is difficult to acquire, are going to immediately recoil at the idea that a normal person could do what they do, right? It's this whole like, oh, you can't automate me, like I'm amazing. I host things. I know how to spin up Tor hidden services and blah, blah, blah. And we get that. But at the same time, we felt that that skill set could be not automated, but partially automated. And the parts that could not be automated could be diluted down into comprehensible buttons on a screen for a normal person to click. And StartOS 0.1 was our first stab at this, and it came out in February of 2020. And it was it was neat. It was about as good as Umbrel is today, right? It was like this really kind of basic, naive approach of just taking Docker containers and like representing them as buttons on a screen, and then you click it and it installs it, and then they run, and you assign it, a Tor address, and it was like very basic stuff. It only took us like 4 months to write the 0.1 version of StartOS, but it worked really well, and people liked it, and we sold a bunch of devices, and we gained a bit of a community, and we didn't think it needed to be perfect to go to market. And it only had 4 services on it when we first, came out with it. But then we recognized all the mistakes we made, right? Not just mistakes, but shortcomings, all the things it couldn't do, right? All the things that we, as the Linux sysadmins, wanted to do with ROS, but we're like, crap, to do that, we have to go back to the command line. Okay, how can we bring that to the GUI? How can we automate it? How can we make it easier? How can we make it less time consuming? And we came up with some new abstractions, and we rewrote it from scratch. And we came out with 0.2 of StartOS. I think it was late 2020 or early 2021, but don't quote me exactly on this. The Git history is there for anyone who wants to take a look. 0.2 was a big improvement. It had dependencies now, so we could do things like LND, CLN, and they could depend on Bitcoin, and we could manage those dependencies and make it such that, if Bitcoin wasn't installed, the system didn't just shit the bed. It told the user, hey, there's a dependency that's missing. Click this button if you'd like us to satisfy it. Furthermore, we could do dependency configuration. So LND could now say, hey, I want Bitcoin to be, I want the ZMQ interface turned on, which is an option in bitcoin.conf. And L&D could make this declaration. And if the user did not have the ZMQ interface enabled, then StartOS could detect this and tell the user that L&D is unhappy because this thing is not enabled. Would you like us to enable it for you? You click OK, and it does it, and everything starts working again. So that was the big breakthrough of 0.2. 0.2 ran into all sorts of challenges related to networking, but also just kind of our reliability and performance issues, because we were really leaning on Docker and Docker Compose, and those are just kind of piles of shit, right? Like they're extremely opinionated and buggy, and you need to often like go in and like kind of like kickstart them again, like restart the Docker daemon. And we just weren't getting the performance and reliability that we wanted out of Docker. Likewise, the backend was split into both. Should I be doing this right now? Do you guys want this? Like,
yes, please.
history?
Yeah, please.
I think like I kind of went off the rails of your original question, but somehow I got here, so I'll keep going. The backend at the time was split into two code bases because two of the founders, Keegan McClelland and Aidan McClelland, brothers. Aidan was all about Rust and Keegan was all about Haskell. And so they had sort of divided up the backend of StartOS from a production standpoint. And Keegan wrote all his stuff in Haskell and Aidan wrote all his in Rust. And we made the decision to move everything to Rust. And so 0.3 not only gets rid of the Haskell code base, but it introduced all new abstractions. It introduced Podman instead of Docker, gave us a little bit more control and reliability. But the changelog to 0.3 is just ridiculous. If you look at the 0.30 release, it was basically a new StartOS, right? Totally new architecture. We redesigned the front end, and it's held well, right? 0.30 came out. What's the date on that guy?
1st, 2022.
2022. Yeah. So we are still in the 0.3 series. So it's been, 3.5 years. We've gone through, we're at 0.351 right now. And I would argue that the changes that were made between 0.30 and 0.351 were probably bigger than all of the changes made prior to 0.30 combined, but none of them were breaking. None of them were non-backwards compatible, right? We were literally just building upon the 0.30 paradigm. And when we got to about 0.33, we realized that we got it wrong again, right? We were getting really good. Like StartOS was starting to get really good in the 0.3 series. And we just realized that to do what we wanted to do, meaning, we can get into the potentiality of this technology here, but ultimately, connecting IoT devices and that are all talk to each other on private networks such that I can go to the other side of the world and control, my entire home security system from my phone in such a way that nobody on earth even knows the security system exists, but I can watch live video footage from the other side of the world. Like we want the whole shebang. We want all of computing to be able to be done in a private, self-contained, sovereign way. And we realized that StartOS 0.30 and the 0.3 series, 0.3x, had the abstractions wrong, that we were going to reach a ceiling at some point where we wouldn't be able to do everything. Our functionality would eventually be limited. And so we set out to do it one last time. And I swear we're not doing it again if 0.40 is not right. So one last chance to get the fundamental architecture right? One last hard fork. And so we set out to build 0.40 in mid-2023. So it's been just over 2 years. In the meantime, we were releasing 0.3 series, right? No, that's 0.34. Okay, I was going to no, we definitely came out with 0.351 sometime in 2024, pretty sure.
Yeah, I was just, for those just listening, we're looking at the changelog page on GitHub right now as Matt's talking. Yeah, you got plenty of 0.3 releases here.
Yeah. So while we were building 0.40, the totally new StartOS, by the way, this is not like some code change. We rewrote it from scratch. Everything, not just the back end, not just the front end, but also the packaging SDK for packaging services for StartOS. Everything got rebooted with all the very, very, very hard lessons learned from the years that came before. While we were building 0.40, we were also iterating 0.3x. Based on bugs and features that we deemed necessary. But we are now on the eve of 040's launch. It's been the longest, most unpredictable, most stressful product development cycle of my life. I have served as I'm the CEO of Start9. I also am effectively the product manager, if you want to think of it that way, for StartOS. I also write a large chunk of the front end code base, and I designed from a product and some code perspective the SDK that developers use to package services for StartOS. And I am just, I simultaneously feel almost embarrassed at how long this took us, because we advertised and genuinely thought that it was going to be ready about a year ago and just didn't understand the magnitude of what we were taking on and how difficult it was going to be, because we were like really figuring things out as we went, things that people have never tried before. But at the same time, I'm running 040 Alpha 9, which we're looking at on the screen right now, on my production server for my personal life. In fact, I'm running Alpha.10, which will be published later today. We just made the last commit to Alpha 10 about 30 minutes ago. So Alpha 10 is coming. Alpha 10 is a dramatic and incredible improvement on Alpha 9, and is probably maybe the last alpha of StartOS 040 before we go to public beta. And I am happy to say now, after years of effort and all sorts of big promises, that this is better than I ever thought it was going to be. It's better than anyone thought it was going to be. We nailed it. The architecture is correct. The features are incredible. It's reliable. It's performant. Fuck Docker. Fuck Podman. We rolled our own LXC container runtime. We just invented it. Aiden did all of this. Aiden invented a new container runtime based on LXC. You can think of it kind of like LXC Compose, which is not a thing. We sort of invented LXC Compose, right? And it's just, the performance metrics are off the chart. The UI has been rewritten from scratch using this new component library called Taiga UI, which is an open source library. It's wonderful. It's a component library for Angular. And Alex, who goes by Waterplea online, is actually the developer of Taiga UI, the component library, and he also wrote the new front end for StartOS with a ton of contributions from me as well. But it's beautiful for the first time ever, right? We've always just thrown up like stuff that devs would expect, like pretty basic kind of dark mode HTML looking stuff. The new StartOS is beautiful. And the networking capabilities especially are where we really broke through here. You can now do networking things on StartOS that were previously impossible and are impossible on any other system other than hand-rolled setups, which takes forever, right? Networking is like the hardest thing. And on StartOS 040, you can now install, I'll give you like a quick little example. I could install Bitcoin, right? Since we're all Bitcoiners here, I can install Bitcoin on StartOS, and I can granularly control its various interfaces. So I can control its RPC interface, its peer-to-peer interface, its ZMQ interface. We might even throw a user interface on it at some point so that you can kind of visualize your node and its connections and stuff. There's no UI on it right now. There doesn't need to be, but it has these interfaces. I could go into the RPC interface and say, okay, I want my Bitcoin RPC to be reachable at this Tor address. Screw that Tor address. I want my RPC interface to be reachable at this vanity Tor address instead. And I can generate a vanity Tor address and, mine for the public key and eventually, put a vanity Tor address on my Bitcoin RPC. I could go, okay, let's do another Tor address because I want two for some reason, one random one and one vanity one. Let's do that. So I add another Tor address. I could now say, I want to add a public domain. Right? rpc.matthill.dev. I want that to be my Bitcoin RPC. So I can add that public domain now. I can attach that public domain to any of my gateways. Gateways are something you can now manage in StartOS. So your router, obviously by default, is going to be your sole gateway for most people. And that is a private gateway, meaning it only creates a LAN. And to access that LAN from the outside would require port forwarding and some firewall rules and all the rest. But you have this gateway. Let's say I want a different gateway, right? I want to spin up a WireGuard reverse tunnel on a VPS. We invented a thing called Start Tunnel that we're going to be announcing soon, which is a totally open source wrapper for WireGuard that you can install on any VPS with a single line command. The result is a very powerful, but also very, very simple piece of software that is set up to automatically reverse tunnel traffic to a set IP address. right? So I would go into my VPS, I would install Start Tunnel, I would say Start Tunnel Connect Server, I would put in the IP address of my home IP address, and hit enter. The result of that is a WireGuard config file. I copy that WireGuard config file, I go over to StartOS, I click Add New Gateway, I click that it is a private gateway, and I upload the WireGuard config file, and I hit save. And now StartOS views my WireGuard VPS as a virtual router, right? It now has two different ways of accessing the internet and two different ways of being accessed from the internet, and it views them both as effectively routers, right? This is just a skinny router in the sky. So now I can go add a public domain to my Bitcoin RPC interface. So I do rpc.matthill.dev and I click save. Oh, and I attach it to the WireGuard gateway because I don't want to expose my home IP address to anyone accessing that Bitcoin RPC interface. So I add the domain, I select the WireGuard interface, I give it a name, and I hit save. StartOS now tells me, okay, you need to go create a DNS record to point your, either star.matthill.dev or rpc.matthill.dev to this IP address, the IP address of the WireGuard gateway, the VPS that I created the new gateway on. So I go do that one DNS entry. StartOS takes care of the rest, right? Oh, I also have to forward a port, right? Because StartOS is going to tell me to access this address, you need to do two things. You need to point your DNS to that public IP, and you need to go to your WireGuard VPS reverse tunnel and forward a port. And Start Tunnel has port forwarding capabilities. It's a single line. It's Start Tunnel, port forward, create, and then you just add the port and then the internal IP port of the container you want to hit. But again, StartOS tells you all of this in like 3 easy steps. So you add the domain, 3 steps later, your Bitcoin RPC is now up on rpc.matthill.dev, for example. I could then add a private domain, right? Let's use a different service now. I have Nextcloud. I mean, I could do it for Bitcoin too, but there's no reason to have a public and a private domain on the same interface. So I could go to Nextcloud, for example, and I install Nextcloud, and it's immediately available on a unique .local address and port on my LAN. It's available on my LAN IP and port. It's available to Tor address. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, I want my friends and family to be able to use my Nextcloud with me, right? I want to have them to all have accounts, but I don't want to expose it to the public internet. I don't want to put Nextcloud on nextcloud.matthill.dev because it now has this attack surface where it could be denial of service attacked. Someone could try to brute force passwords. I just don't want it on the public internet. I don't want anyone to even know that it exists. But my family's not going to use Tor. And my family also is kind of weirded out by IP addresses and ports. Okay, so sure, I could go install VPNs on all of their phones and laptops, right? And turn the VPN on my router on, or use Start Tunnel, and say, okay, everyone, if you want to use Nextcloud, you got to go to 192.168.3.3 and at this port, and they're going to be like, I'm not putting that in my browser. That's scary. What I could do instead is I could create a private domain for Nextcloud, and I would call it matt.nextcloud or matt.fuckyounextcloud. It doesn't matter. I can make up any domain I want because it doesn't have to exist, right? It's just I could use facebook.com could be my Nextcloud instance if I wanted it to be, okay? So I add facebook.com to my Nextcloud user interface, and StartOS now tells me, okay, if you want this to work, you got to do a couple of things. So one, you need to go to your router and tell your router to no longer use, Google for DNS, right? You need to tell your router to use StartOS for DNS. So go put this single rule, this IP address into your router for DNS. StartOS, when I added the private domain, already created the DNS entry to route facebook.com to my Nextcloud internal IP port. So once I point my router to my server for DNS, now I can go put VPN clients on all of my family's phones and laptops and tell them to turn on the VPN client and go to facebook.com. And it just pops up as our Nextcloud instance, right? But obviously we wouldn't name it facebook.com because they might actually want to go there too. Hopefully not, but maybe. And so they can now visit my Nextcloud instance via VPN on a ClearNet domain with a root CA, right? Signed by my server's root CA. So I'm also going to have to, put my root CA on their phones and laptops. But what this allows me to do, I'm talking about really advanced shit right now, right? that not a lot of people are going to do. But the amount of work that it takes to do the things that I'm describing on StartOS is a fraction of what it would take to do on Ubuntu. All right. And a different sort of setup. Like StartOS has these primitives abstracted such that you can push a few buttons in a UI, maybe go to your router and run a single command, and you're done. Right. It's like if we think of ourselves now, like the new StartOS has so much more power than the old ones, but you have to follow instructions. And so the way that I've been talking about this to people and the way that I'm going to market it once this is out in the wild is that if you want to know what we do and what we are and how to use it, we are the digital equivalent of IKEA furniture. That is sort of how you should think about StartOS, is it's like anything that you want to build, anything you want to do, we have an instruction set to do it. And you can do it. I promise you, the instruction set is not too complicated, but it's the middle ground between do it yourself, figure it out and do it yourself, and push a button, we do everything for you, but you have to trust us. And by the way, everything goes through our servers and we can spy on you. It's the middle ground of that, which is you can do it. We can help. That's the Home Depot slogan, but I'm thinking about taking it. It's like exactly what we want. You know, you can do it. We can help. And we, being StartOS and our technical support team, is there to hold your hand every step of the way. Okay, super long-winded, but I could not be more excited about 040, and I just think it's going to be a hit.
Exciting. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I've been looking forward to it and following the progress. The issue, as you kind of alluded to with Tor, well, Tor has a great upside, which is that there's no configuration required for hole punching through your NAT. So, you know, for people who are familiar with that terminology, it means you just use it and it's good to go. But the problem, of course, is there's a couple problems. The trade-offs are, one is your URL is this long, complicated looking string that's hard to remember. Another problem is that Tor is often slow and unreliable. So the alternative that I've done for myself, of course, and like many other people who are more technical, I've set up a VPS with a WireGuard, and I've also used Tailscale to make that easier, and it's nice and ergonomic. But like you said, if I had to set that up for there's just no way that my family or anybody less technical is going to do it. I mean, for me, even it was a many day head banging against the wall challenge. And it's just really cool to hear that it's going to be coming to StartOS for anybody to be able to do it, even just following some basic instructions, because the user experience, in my opinion, the benefit that you see when you have these WireGuard tunnels, it's amazing. It's like having your own, it's exactly the same experience with speed and reliability that you get when you have these third-party servers with giant engineering teams and ops teams running 24/7 to give you this great experience. But now you get to have it with your own self-hosted data. So it's really cool, and I'm excited to hear that's coming out.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned Tailscale, right? We get asked a lot about Tailscale, and we looked into it and we looked kind of how it works and what the requirements are, and we're not fans. I mean, we think it's a cool project. It sort of is a across the line from what we like in terms of sovereignty and control, user control, right? Like Tailscale requires a Tailscale account. You have to be running their software on the device you're trying to reach. And none of that is necessary for what it's doing, which is why we built StartTunnel. So StartTunnel, like I said, is just it's a wrapper for WireGuard. It's totally open source. We're going to release it under MIT. We hope people build on it. And it is just you can think of it as like an alternative to Tailscale, but that you self-host on a VPS. And it's just simpler. It is very, very simple, right? You provision a VPS with any Debian-based Linux distro. So you can throw up Debian, run a single line command to install StartTunnel, run a single line to connect it to your server, and then copy paste the resulting config file to your server, and you're done. You now have this permanent reverse tunnel going to your server in such a way that StartOS views it as another LAN, it gets a LAN IP, it gets a WAN IP, it gets ports, and StartOS almost can't tell the difference between this thing and your router. It just thinks of it as another router. And so it's your own personal hand-rolled Tailscale for the price of a VPS, whatever that costs you. And in most cases, people will be able to get the cheapest one because the resources required by Start Tunnel are effectively negligible, right? From compute, memory, and disk, you don't need anything. The only thing that really matters is transfer, right? How much bandwidth the VPS has. But most people don't have high upload speeds from their homes anyway. And it's upload that matters when you're running a server, not download, like when you're running a client. So if your home upload speeds are like 30 megabits per second, the biggest VPS transfer speeds you would want is 30 megabits per second. That's the upper bound of speed you're going to be able to get when accessing your server via the reverse tunnel anyway. So for most people, the cheapest VPS they can find is going to be perfectly sufficient for this. People who have like fiber gigabit internet obviously get gigabit upload speeds. Not that they need that, right? Unless you're running a website from your home that gets millions and millions of clicks, or you're trying to do, stream video to the world and compete with Netflix illegally or something. Unless you're doing something like that, again, bare bones VPSs are going to be just fine.
It's a really powerful concept. And for people who have never rented a VPS before, you can get the lower end ones for like $4, $5 a month. Probably even less if you're doing it for like a package of 12 months or something like that. So that's really cool. I think it's accessible to everybody.
There's some that take Bitcoin.
Yes. In fact, we have an entire episode on private VPS hosting and how you can do that with Bitcoin and anonymity and not KYCing yourself and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
You mentioned routers, and the last time that I was at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville in 2024, last year, I saw the Start9 booth and you guys had these router prototypes. Can you tell us more about that? What's the update on that and what do those do?
Yeah, boy, oh boy. Yeah, we're so excited about the router. We were a little premature at Nashville because we didn't realize the workload of StartOS 040, right? Like we are a tiny team. We don't have like a team working on the router and a team working on StartOS. It's just me and Aiden, and Alex. It's just a few guys trying to build all this. So the router has made progress. We have command line prototypes in place for a lot of the features that the router needs. We are, for those who don't know, Start9 has previously announced that we are building a fully open source MIT licensed router operating system whose it'll be based on OpenWRT, which is a Linux router OS that is almost infinitely powerful and configurable, but notoriously impossible to use because it's so many options and it's command line driven, and they built some GUI for it, but it's unintelligible to any human being. And so we set out to use this as a base because it's, again, really API driven, OpenWRT, and we weren't planning to use the GUI anyway. So we forked OpenWRT. We're calling it StartWRT because we're not that creative. And we built a custom GUI for it. So a user interface that in line with StartOS tries to take really advanced Linux sysadmin stuff and represent it in ways that a normal person can understand. Router GUIs are notoriously terrible, right? They're from 1995. I know there's some newer ones that try. The best router GUIs out there are actually the ones that come stock with like your ISP router. If Comcast comes and drops a router at your house and they're like, hey, you can administer it through this GUI. Well, if you ever noticed, the GUI is at like comcast.com, log into your account. And so it's like you're administering your home device through a Comcast server and you're like changing your Wi-Fi password. It's just the insanity of how horribly insecure and in private that is it's just crazy. So the best router GUIs, the ones that most people are capable of actually using, tend to be tied to cloud-based ISP-owned software that it has remote access to your LAN and can change your Wi-Fi passwords on their servers. So we wanted to create a GUI that was not only as easy to use as those GUIs, but afforded many more powers, many more features, advanced stuff. And we realized that OpenWRT is a plugin based operating system. So the basis of OpenWRT is fairly skinny, and then you can write these plugins, and there are many, many plugins out there already that give OpenWRT kind of these specific features and powers. And we realized that what we wanted from our router UI, because that's where we started, we actually just designed the UI and the experience that we wanted to bring to somebody, and then worked backwards and said, okay, what existing operating system can satisfy this the best, and with, not only from a performance, security, openness standpoint, but from a level of effort on our side. Like, we don't want to build something that already exists. So that's where OpenWRT came from. It checked all the boxes, and we realized that we didn't have to build that much. When I say that, I mean, it's not like building StartOS, right? It's much, much, much smaller than what we had to do for StartOS. StartOS was based on Debian. It's almost not worth saying that anymore because it's in another galaxy. But like, I hope that doesn't happen with OpenWRT. I don't think we need to do a whole lot more because OpenWRT almost does everything already, but it didn't do what we wanted. It was missing a couple features. And so we're writing custom plugins for OpenWRT. We'll license them, MIT. And then ultimately StartWRT then is just OpenWRT with a few custom plugins and a custom GUI, and it's StartWRT. And we will sell routers, physical hardware, with StartWRT pre-installed, just like we do our servers today. And we will warranty them. We will provide excellent on-demand customer support for them. But you don't have to do business with us. StartWRT will be fully open source. And any router hardware that you already possess that was capable of running OpenWRT will be able to run StartWRT. It'll be compatible with any hardware that OpenWRT is compatible with. So we expect many DIY people will just do it, and we will encourage that. And yeah, I could talk a little bit about some of the unique features that the router offers if you want to get into it.
Yeah, quick question.
Or we can just wait for the announcement.
If you have the Start9 router and you don't have StartOS, are they completely standalone products that you can use one without the other?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we expect that the router will by far exceed the market for servers, right? So right now when we sell StartOS servers with StartOS pre-installed, we are selling to a very tiny corner of the world, right? Like we're selling to a market defined as anarchists and libertarians who have had enough and are aware of Bitcoin, but also don't want their data and messaging in the hands of Google and Apple, and care enough to actually do something about it, but not too much because they're also lazy, and they're busy with their lives. And so it's like a really, really niche market. And even with that tiny little niche market, like, we're proving out the business model. We're doing well from a business standpoint. And it's like a tiny test market. And we hope that market grows, right? We very much want the market for self-hosting and personal servers to grow by orders of magnitude over the next decade. And I think that it will. We definitely want the number of people who want to run Bitcoin nodes to grow over the next decade. And I think it will. And we will continue to try to be the go-to best way to do Bitcoin nodes and all Bitcoin self-hosting related activities. But we're not just banking on that. And it's not just a business decision either. We are genuinely trying to invent sovereign computing, right? Not invent. We are trying to bring sovereign computing to ordinary people. And the router is necessary for that. You cannot have a sovereign computing paradigm with a Comcast router. You're done. It's the elephant in the room. None of your traffic is safe. None of your passwords are not safe. Your LAN is not safe. They can see every device on your LAN, even if they can't control it, which they might be able to. It's just, you're using closed source software on closed source hardware on a server you don't control. And it's just like, come on. There needs to be a usable, powerful, open source router with the proper abstractions for self-hosting. So one way that we're going to market this router is we're going to market it as like the self-hosters router. Right? This is the router you get if you want to run servers from your home. right? If you don't, you can still use this router. It's going to have incredible VPN capabilities, incredible security abstractions for control over the LAN. Again, like we came up with, I'm so proud of the designs for the router. It's not coded up yet, right? Not in total at least, but it's just everything I've ever wanted from a router and everything that everyone we talked to ever wanted from a router. And and it's fully open, okay? And I don't just mean the software. We are trying to, and we're working on something right now that I cannot announce yet because it's still uncertain, but we think we might deliver fully open hardware, like completely fully open hardware, like not a single closed source firmware blob, not a single closed source package.
Would that
not
involve
even
RISC-V chips?
It certainly would, yes.
Cool,
We're
cool.
working on something really cool right now, and it's still a little indeterminate, but we absolutely might bring the first ever RISC-V fully open from chip to, plugin, OpenWRT plugin router into the world. But it also just happens to be the most powerful router because even if our GUI doesn't enable you to do something, you can always open the stock OpenWRT GUI, and you can always go to the command line. So there's no limitation to what you can do with this router. We've just taken all the things that we think most people will want to do. We'll call it the first 2 standard deviations of users that we imagine. All those features are in the GUI. If you're a 3rd deviation user, if you're doing something really wild with your network, you're probably going to have to pop the LUCI GUI or go on the command line. But that's fine because you know what you're doing if you're in the 3rd deviation of users. So we think that our GUI, the StartWRT graphical interface, captures what 99% of people are going to ever want to do with a router in a highly intuitive, click button, highly performant way.
Yeah, I think from a product perspective, you could imagine that StartOS 4 is launched and that people run into these scenarios where the OS tells them, as you described, to do this, you need to go to your router and you need to turn on port forwarding. And it could almost fail at that point in the user journey if the UI to their home router sucks or is difficult to use. And you don't really have a lot of, because of like privacy and stuff, you don't have visibility into what router operating system, they have, what kind of router. There's not really like an easy way from like a customer support perspective to tell them exactly where to forward that port on that janky router OS. So it seems like a wise product decision to try and, build something better for the router as well.
Very natural extension. And one of the other reasons we chose OpenWRT is because that it is kind of designed to be utilized via API with authorized access. So guess what you're going to be able to do, right? Yes, the router is a standalone product that you can use as a router and not care about Start9 or servers or any of that. The server is something that you can use and not give a crap about the router. But if you have both, right, the whole is greater than some of the parts. Now you can take your StartOS public key, your SSH public key, which is displayed in the About menu of StartOS, and go to your router and authorize your server's public key to administer the router. And now when you add a public domain to StartOS and the instructions pop up and say, you need to go, forward this port in your router, it can also say, would you like me to do it for you? And you click yes, and then it just forwards that port in your router. So when you combine them, it gets really cool. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to this. This sounds like something I absolutely want to get my hands on. And so let me ask you the question with the caveat that software takes time and hardware as well. When is this going to be available or estimated to be available?
We're shooting for 2026. So definitely I can, let me tell you when it's not going to be available. It will not be available in the first half of 2026.
Okay.
Gotcha. That's all I know. I know it will not be available by July 1st, 2026. We are going to try to make it available by the holidays of 2026. But if this shit doesn't come out till the holidays of 2027, don't shoot me. We have no idea. We thought we knew with StartOS, and we were so wrong that I'm just not repeating the mistake. I'm not going to do it. So I'll tell people when it's not going to be available, right? Not tell them when it is going to be available. All I can say is that we are busting our ass and we're super excited and we work very long hours, but we are a tiny team. We are a bootstrap startup, even 6 years in, and we like it that way. Scale comes with productivity gains, but it also comes with a bunch of costs, and we're not ready. We don't want to do it. We have parts of the company that we can scale, like our technical support. Later this week, I guess it's getting to the end of the week here, probably tomorrow or Friday, I will be announcing a new program that we are doing. Are you guys familiar with our community tech program?
Yes.
I'm not, and some listeners might not be. What is it?
So there's a neat little write-up about it at blog.start9.com. In fact, if you want to pull it up on the screen here, we could do it. I will talk through it as well, but I figured,
This one right
so
here,
go
community
to
tech
community
programs?
tech program, now hiring with hiring in parentheses. So the community tech program was our novel approach to kind of employment and scaling a support department. And so rather than hiring dedicated community support and technical support people and having to train them and then having the risk of them quitting or leaving or not being available, going on vacation, et cetera, and constantly dealing with the thing that employers deal with all the time, which is how do you get the people you need when you need them at the price you need them and all the rest. Because of my previous life where I was developing applications that helped with labor market efficiencies, I came up with this idea of, well, why don't we just do group training? Why don't we just call for applicants? There'll need to be some kind of minimal competency or experience, with IT or Linux stuff. They'll need to be good communicators, et cetera. So we'll do a minor vetting and then invite all the people that got through that vetting process to a giant group training program, right? So it'll be a weekend long, intensive, here's what Start9 is, here's what StartOS is, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of that program, everyone who gets through it is effectively now certified. Okay. We'll just use that word loosely since it's not like an official, thing. It's just basically me saying somebody's good enough, but you're now certified. You're a Start9 certified technician. With that certification, you gain only rights, not obligations. You never have to work, right? You get that certification. It's like Uber, right? You get qualified to drive for Uber, but you never have to get in the car and drive. You now have your certification. Having that cert allows you to, but not requires you to, pick up shifts and monitor Start9's community channels. So like our private matrix server, our community discourse, which is a self-hosted community management software, email, right? Like our support channels. You are now qualified, right? We have certified you to monitor those channels. And if you want to, grab a shift. We publish an open calendar. We just publish a calendar and people who are certified kind of put their name into the calendar and it fills up. And then we get the coverage that we need. These people are all over the world, so we have good time zone coverage. And if anyone ever can't work, like they claimed a shift, but then they realize that they can't work, they use automated shift trading software, which I wrote back in 2016, to basically offer their shift to everyone else who is certified. And the first person to claim that shift gets it, and then it automatically shuts down for everyone else. The manager is notified that the trade took place, and we can get our payroll right at the end of the month. So basically, people work when they want, if they want, however much they want, so long as they maintain their certification, which again is a very informal process at this point. And at the end of the month, we tally up the hours, and I send everybody a Bitcoin. And that's it. And everyone makes the same amount. In the future, I could assume that there might be some stratification where we'll have like senior techs and mid-level techs and junior techs, and they make different amounts. And it could get more complicated. But because we do support in the way that we do, meaning we're not answering phone calls one-on-one for everybody, we do what I call group therapy, right? Which is this idea of a giant Telegram channel. Someone comes in and asks a question and they get a answer either from a volunteer in the community, just somebody who was lurking around and could help them, or from the person who's on staff at that time, the certified person. And even if the community is helping the community, the certified person is still there monitoring the chats to make sure that nobody, is wrong or lying or scamming, et cetera. Scamming doesn't happen on our support server because it's private and gated and paid. So we don't have that issue, and that's why we did that. But it works really well. It scales really well. And eventually we can use all of these support interactions, these years and years of like one-on-one expert support interactions that are in a chat thread, categorized by topic, by the way, because we have different rooms for different topics, to eventually train, a really competent tier 1 support AI. And the community techs would then be there to observe the interactions between the AI and the customer, and for the purposes of escalation. So we think we've sort of cracked the code on how to scale a support for technology. And all the support that we do today is knowingly being sort of cataloged for future training for an AI. And so Start9 support will always be incredible. It'll always be backed by humans who are on staff and fully qualified. But again, so this is our community tech program. We implemented this a couple years ago, and it's been just fantastic. It has been a home run hit. Start9 offers incredible support to all of our customers, all of our users, and that's that. This week, we're announcing a new program, which is similar in concept. It sort of, it expands upon the success of this program, and we're calling it our Community Developer Program. And ultimately, the goal of this program is to get more and more software packaged for StartOS. This is to expand the number of service offerings on StartOS. And to get a piece of software onto StartOS requires it to be packaged for StartOS, right? StartOS is not Debian. It has a unique package format. You can't just take an existing Debian package and install it on StartOS, for the same reason that you can't install a Mac application on Windows. It's a different operating system. And so software has to be packaged for StartOS. And we in 040 have now made that process very, very easy. Okay, we've dramatically simplified what it takes to package something for StartOS, while at the same time dramatically expanding the number of features package developers can utilize in StartOS. The StartOS package APIs have expanded by probably 5x what they were in 0351. Like, you can do almost anything. We actually have yet to, in 040 packaging, run into a circumstance where we said, man, wouldn't it be great if the Lightning Network daemon, if the LND package could do blah? And we weren't able to do it. We have not run into that circumstance yet. It is, you can do anything. If you can think of it, you can do it. That is the grand claim of StartOS 040 SDK and service packaging, is if you can think of it, you can do it. And the essence of packaging for StartOS is that you, the package developer, you are the IT professional, Linux sysadmin, network engineer, dev, okay? You're the guy who does this. You're the guy who does this on Ubuntu, right? You're the guy who automated your home using open source tools and did it over the course of months and months. So you know what you're doing. What if you could encode yourself into a package, a piece of software, such that everyone else on Earth could benefit from the capital that you built up, right? So many home labbers spend hours and hours and hours setting up their personal home labs, but it's like, why can't others benefit from the work that you did? Like, you wrote some scripts, right? You wrote some scripts to monitor the health of your Nextcloud server. And if one of those pings ever fails, then you issue a notification and it sends to you via SMTP, but it also automatically shuts down Nextcloud until you go change a config variable in the underlying PHP config file, right? It's like, wow, you're incredible. Why didn't you do that for StartOS? Like, go write that exact same code for the Nextcloud package for StartOS. Now when somebody installs Nextcloud on StartOS, they get you too. You encode yourself into these upstream packages, right? So packaging for StartOS is an incredibly, simple experience, because going bare bones, like getting to hello world, is actually really easy now. You just take, let's say a package has already been Dockerized. There's a Docker container for your package. Getting it to run on StartOS is like cloning a repo, a template repository, and swapping out the URL that it grabs the Docker container from Docker Hub. Done. And maybe changing the name and the ID, right? And boom, it's running on StartOS. But now you get to sit down and go like this and be like, what else can I do with this? What other advanced crazy stuff do I know how to do that I think mom and pops all over the world could benefit from. I'm going to encode myself into this package now. And I'm telling you, it's one thing for me to say it right now, but the people who are learning how to do this and who are weekly attending, we have bi-weekly calls for office hours where I get on the call and I literally pair program with people and show them how to use the APIs. We do screen sharing. We talk about how to achieve things. We review other packages and how they did things. And it is like this endless and very fun and rewarding experience of like creativity. It's not just, let's put Nextcloud on StartOS. It's like, let's put Nextcloud with all this cool stuff around it on StartOS. And again, anything you can think of, you can do. So just make something up right now and I'll tell you if it's possible. If you come up with something while we're on this call later, okay? And I could give you like some examples if you want, but I might be for a different call. Anyway, we're announcing this program, okay? The Community Developer Program. And the way that the program is going to work is similar to the Community Tech Program. I am going to create some webinars, like 101, like introduction to packaging for StartOS, kind of, screen share webinars. And I will introduce what StartOS is. I'll introduce what a StartOS package is. We'll go through the Hello World template. We'll review the SDK and all the different APIs that you can use. And if you love it, show up for the 102 call. It's in 2 weeks. And these will be going forever. This will be a recurring, just every month we'll have a 101 call. Every month we'll have a 102 call. And as you start going through and learning, then you might be like, all right, well, I'm going to go package up cal.com. I like using that. So let's go package cal.com. And, you throw your hat into the ring, go try to package it. You're struggling. You have a question, show up to office hours. We're going to do office hours twice a week for 2 hours a day, right? 4 hours a week. You're going to get me or another senior level package developer who can just sit down and work with you directly on whatever you're working on while other people watch, right? So it's like everyone is benefiting from everyone's work. And so you show up, you get help, and eventually you've done a package. Well, eventually, me or again, one of a couple other people at this point will be able to be like, hey, you know what? I think he can do it. Like, this is somebody that has been on the calls. He's packaged a couple of things. He's sort of proven that he can do this. Well, again, very informal, just like the Community Tech Program, you are now certified by us. Okay. This is just a stupid credentialist thing. It's like Start9 has said, you are a Start9 approved or Start9 certified package developer. Why would you want that? Here's why. Once you have your very unofficial StartOS Start9 certification package developer badge, we will now broker you to anyone on earth who wants things packaged. And we get hit up constantly by companies that are like, I write this software and our customers are asking us to put it on StartOS, and we don't know how to do that, and we don't want to know how to do that, and we don't want to learn. Eventually they will. I think this will be a thing at companies, and they'll just package for StartOS in the same way that they do Mac OS and Windows, but we don't have that kind of leverage yet. So they come to us and they're like, put our software on your marketplace. And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm sorry, but we're busy. But now that I got this pool of like 10 certified package developers, I can just throw a bounty out and be like, hey, everyone, there's somebody asking for this thing to be packaged. They're willing to pay X amount of money for it. Start9 as a company would love to see this too, and we would benefit because now all of our existing users get more superpowers. So we'll add to the bounty as well. We'll throw some money in too. Then we go on social media and we say, hey, everyone on earth, so-and-so the company wants their stuff packaged for StartOS. Start9 wants it packaged for StartOS. If you too want it packaged for StartOS, throw some money into this BTC Pay Server crowdfund that we spun up. And, Bob over there is going to package it up. He's committed. He said that he will be the one to package it up. And we know he can do it because we trained and certified him. So it's like everyone wins. Bob makes money. Start9 gets more packages on its marketplace. The upstream development team gets their distribution for their open source software. The whole thing is a marketing event online with the crowdfund, and just everyone wins. And customers now have more services available to them. I shouldn't even say customers, just anyone using StartOS now has more services available to them. And perpetuity deals could get cut. So for example, Start9 has committed publicly to maintaining about 25 to 30 critical services, right? Software that we're like StartOS just isn't StartOS without Nextcloud. I'm sorry, it's not. Nextcloud is the killer app for self-hosting, and it must be there. Well, guess what? The Nextcloud team don't give a shit about us. They don't know who we are. We tried to reach out to them. They're never going to respond to us. They're too good for us. They don't care about StartOS. Fine. We're still going to put Nextcloud on StartOS. But we have to do it. We have to take responsibility for it. We have to make sure it's up to date. We have to make sure it's bug-free. And so what I want to be able to do, rather than doing it myself because I'm busy, is I want to be able to turn to one of my certified package devs on the other side of the world, who doesn't have a job, by the way, is totally voluntary, and just be like, hey, do you want to maintain Nextcloud? I'll give you X amount of money per month, payable in Bitcoin at the first of every month. And what you need to do is basically just keep it up to date. Like, make sure that if Nextcloud comes out with a new version, the new version is reflected on StartOS. Make sure that if there's a way to improve the Nextcloud package using StartOS APIs, please improve it. Make it as good as it can be. Make it bug-free. And if StartOS comes out with a new version or a new feature, make sure you keep it updated to that. Ultimately, what this means is that every package is a different level of complexity. Some packages are going to be, basically nothing. They come out with a new version every year, and it's just a bug patch from the previous version. And so, it's not going to be worth a lot. But other things that are changing constantly and requiring lots of changes are much harder to maintain, and they'll be worth more. And so each package maintenance kind of bounty deal will be cut on a case-by-case basis. And somebody who thinks it's worthwhile to maintain it and earn earn, good value for hours put in, income, right? Because again, even if the package is heavy, as somebody who's been maintaining these packages for years, I can tell you that even the heaviest ones sometimes have months where nothing is required. Most months, there's like a minor version bump, and you literally have to change a single string in the package and hit deploy, and you're done. And some months it's like, oh boy, we swapped out the APIs on you, we broke your shit, and you need to put in 10 hours of work to fix it. So it really is kind of variable. And we're just going to try to do our best to come up with a fair value for maintaining those packages. And if someone claims it, great. If not, we'll up the number until someone does claim it. And that's how we intend to scale not only support for the services that we are dedicated to maintaining on the Start9 registry, but also just expand in general the number of services available on StartOS. We just want to be a glue, a liaison that connects demand for new services on StartOS with supply, the people who are capable of packaging services for StartOS. We just want to connect those people as best we can such that the ecosystem grows. And we want to do so in a cost-effective way by not literally hiring developers because there's just no way that would be efficient, right? The bounty program is more efficient. It's modular, it's piecemeal.
Really cool. I never realized that Start9 was involved in all of this kind of, supply and demand kind of matching stuff.
We're getting there. Yeah.
If I can segue a little bit, kind of similar related topic, like just the idea of running a startup with, so few employees and dedicated engineers. Well, very dedicated engineers, but, so few full-time engineers is what I mean. I know a lot of people who work for small startups, and I feel like, in the 1 to 3 person startup range, everybody is using AI to code with. And I was somehow, though, I can't imagine someone such as yourself, spinning up a bunch of instances of Claude Code and using or GPT-5 or something like that. So I was kind of curious how you approach AI or coding with it, if at all, for Start9.
Yeah, I think I'm representative of the other developers at Start9. Again, there's not many of us, but I don't think any of us start with AI. We don't go to it like vibe coding style prompt and be like, build this app or build this module, right? We imagine, we architect, and then we start building. And where I think AI shines in the programming world at the moment, at least, is not on the architecture side of things. It is on the scripting side of things. It's really, really good at syntax and kind of pure functions, like write me a bash script that does this thing, or, come up with a regular expression that satisfies, these requirements, or write a TypeScript function that takes in, a parameter of this type and then puts out, this result. And it can do these like kind of these limited scope, pure function or kind of utility function stuff, like utils. And so we architect and design, and then sure, you can like plug in these discrete things on a as needed basis. If you try to get AI to like code for you, to do the actual kind of hard work that developers do, which is really around creating abstractions, architecting things in ways that are coherent and non-redundant and dry. Just AI isn't there yet, in our opinion, and maybe I'm just not using it right. But the sort of testing that we've done around it always kind of puts something out that appears okay, but might not hold water when it's actually spun up. Like it only does in a way what you tell it to still. It's still kind of a mongrel, like I'm actually blown away at what its capabilities are, just like everyone else on Earth. But there are certain things where it's just like, what? No, like you have to be such a good prompter, basically. You have to be the best prompter in history to get it to produce functional code. Not functional as in functional programming, but like code that works, You just have to be incredible at prompting. And when you get to that level of prompting, why not just write the code, right? Like I don't want to spend an hour writing prompts to get code that I could write in 30 minutes. It's just like, it's actually not a time saver at that point. But however, like I said, there are absolutely times when I'm just like, I don't want to sit there and like come up with the very particular, like I know AI could just pump it out in 2 seconds. And so I'll go to it, right? It's on a case by case as needed basis, not as a sort of fundamental strategy.
That makes sense. And like when you do have to turn to it, like, I mean, I agree with you about the like architectural approach. That's kind of what I've found too, is that like, if I want to build something that I know is going to like last, that I'm going to want to still maintain in 6 months, then I need to have pretty strong opinions about the architecture of it. And I need to, really, really force the AI to stick to my architecture and build it the way I want to. But yeah. So I mean, I agree with like your overall assessment. Like the architecture and the hard work is that's not replaceable yet. But like in those few moments where you do have to turn to AI, are you just like going to Claude Code, or do you have like a self-hosted setup or something?
Oh, unfortunately, we're not to the self-hosted yet. So Aiden really likes Perplexity. I've used Claude, I've used Perplexity, I've used ChatGPT. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter because they're all about equivalent at the things that I use it for, right? I think they might differ in certain ways, but I've never run into any differences, and I've never had that like nagging feeling of why am I using someone else's server for this? Because what I'm putting up there is like write a pure function that takes these inputs and these outputs. And it's like, I don't feel like I'm sharing anything personal. I don't think it's all open source code anyway. There's nothing proprietary. But that said, I am always striving to do cloud things in a self-hosted way, but 040 is really important for that, right? So one of the things that we're doing with 040 is enabling hardware acceleration. So, the AI stuff is, I can't be bothered. I can't be waiting 30 seconds for a response from a small model,
Yeah.
like give me power. Like the power and accessibility of it is more important than who's hosting it, believe it or not, right? But all things being equal, or even close to equal, the self-hosting starts to get really important. So we have not yet been able to, using our own operating system and hardware, do self-hosted AI in a satisfactory way, right? So for example, we currently use Shopify for our e-commerce solution, right? Shopify is an amazing, incredible, massive, endlessly powerful e-commerce solution. that is 100% third-party trusted, SaaS product, super expensive, and it just kills me every single day that we are using that. And I know that we don't have to. There are self-hosted solutions, but I have to make these tough choices just like I do in my personal life about trade-offs and costs. Like, what is the cost of not using Shopify? And what does that mean for the longevity and success of the business as a whole? I have to operate at that scope, not just my personal desires. And continually, the equation keeps resulting in stick with Shopify because it does things that, are not easy to do in a self-hosted sovereign way, all the way from networking to specific features. And so what we do is I allow that pain to exist. I use it to inform the product development at Start9. This is how we do product development. It's how we know what to build next, is that I, as an individual, refuse to self-host anything that's not running on StartOS. So for me, it's like, I really want a security camera, but I won't do it until I can do it using my own product. And so the more I want something and the more Start9 as a company wants something that the product does not yet support is actually what informs what we're going to build next. So I like it. I like that my personal life and my company have almost as a principle that we will only do it if we can do it using our own product and thereby push the product forward. That becomes the motive force of product development. And
it's
AI just
go
yet.
ahead.
I was just saying the AI stuff just wasn't there yet. And it's not that it wasn't there yet from a software perspective, because we have Ollama and Open Web UI available for StartOS. It's easy on StartOS to install a ChatGPT-like identical experience running an open source model that you got from Hugging Face via Ollama, and it's easy and it works and it's great, but it's slow and it's stupid, and that mostly comes down to hardware. That's a hardware limitation. And part of that is something we can't control, right? Because GPU acceleration, like inference, just is very expensive, right? If you want something that can do, enough tokens to satisfy your urgency, it starts getting very, very expensive, like many thousands of dollars for these, powerful NVIDIA GPUs, and you're introducing closed source hardware and software into the equation. So what we are really excited about is we are talking with many different, companies and keeping an eye on the development of consumer grade, yet powerful and cheap acceleration, because it's coming fast, right? This is an initiative that companies all around the world because of the AI boom. And so we think that in the coming, 5 years, there is going to be a rapid commoditization of consumer grade inference, and that we're going to see GPUs that are not NVIDIA, that are potentially maybe even RISC-V based and fully open source GPUs that can do really powerful models, even upward of 70 billion parameter models, and get you immediate great responses for cheap, for a few $100, and that's our hope. We're not doing that. We don't know how to build those, right? We're not operating at the chip level. We're not that kind of computing company yet, maybe someday, but we are talking with those companies and trying to get that hardware available for our products as soon as it becomes available upstream. So that's number one from a hardware problem, is that the components, the GPUs, are just too expensive. But number two is that StartOS needed to be able to intelligently outsource these tasks to the GPU, right? That we needed to have the APIs available in StartOS for package developers to be able to tell StartOS that they want to use certain hardware components. And we wanted to build it in an abstract way, not a fragile bespoke way just for AI acceleration. We wanted package developers to be able to say, hey, I have a hardware requirement that there's a second Wi-Fi chip on this device, right? We wanted package developers to be able to inspect the hardware on which StartOS is running to see if it satisfies their needs, and message to the user if it does not and why it does not, so that the user could potentially go get that hardware, right? That's the degree to which we've thought through the kind of package developer and user intersection. Is we want package developers to be that expert person in your life that just like knows everything about self-hosting and what hardware is needed. And we wanted them to be able to encode it without limitation into the package. And that includes hardware acceleration, which just isn't done yet. So it is going into 040. But it's not in alpha.10. It's actually like the last, dare I say, kind of feature wish list for 040. We might even leave it off if we feel like it. We'll see.
Well, this is beautiful. It sounds like with Start9's help, that self-hosting is finally getting the love and attention that it really deserves.
That's our goal.
I just have one more question for you, and that is, well, let me say for people who don't know what TabConf is, it's an annual Bitcoin-focused, technical, small, high-signal conference here in Atlanta. And I've gone the last several years, and it's been a great experience. I've gotten to meet and hang out and chat with the Start9 guys, including you, Matt, in person. And my question is, are you going to be attending TabConf this year in 2025?
Yes, we'll be there, and we'll have a pretty strong presence. Actually, we're going to be there for both Builder Days. We'll have a station, like a workshop, a perpetual workshop for those 2 days, where people can come over and do two things. One, they can come and build their server and get StartOS flashed to it. They can bring your own hardware type of thing. We will also help you get StartOS set up on a VPS. If you don't have any hardware, you can come over and we will help you provision a VPS and flash StartOS to it using the ISO.
That's awesome.
And, so we'll help you get set up with a server. I don't know if we're going to bring servers. Maybe we'll bring a couple to sell, but that's not really the point of our attending TabConf. People might want them though, so we'll bring a couple. But also, we will be doing package development. So anyone who has any interest whatsoever in packaging anything for StartOS, Bitcoin, Lightning, or unrelated entirely, can come over and learn how to do some package development. We will pair program with you on packaging, whatever it is that you're working on. You could just watch me code up some new package, right? Like we'll pick something out in the world and we'll be like, all right, let's package that for StartOS. And we'll just in real time, like code it up and get it packaged and release it onto the marketplace. So basically I'm just going to be sitting there coding for a couple of days and building servers. And so anyone's welcome to come over and participate.
Great.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I'll definitely see you there. Is there anything else before we conclude that you wanted to cover that we might not have gotten to yet?
No, that was a lot. I leaked a bunch of crap I'm not supposed to, but okay.
Well, thanks a lot. This was a great conversation, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us here.
Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about anything that we discussed, you can look for links in the show notes. That should be in your podcast player, or you can go to atlbitlab.com/podcast. On a final note, if you found this information useful and you want to help support us, you can always send us a tip in Bitcoin. Your support really helps it so that we can keep bringing you content like this. All right, catch you later.